Never discriminate on Halloween night. The old woman at the end of Maple Street tried to warn them, but they laughed. Gave black kids candy corn while white kids got full-size chocolate bars. Big mistake. Willow Creek, population 8,000, the kind of suburb where everyone knows everyone, where houses cost $500,000 minimum, where the Halloween decorations start going up in September, and the competition is serious. Best decorated house wins bragging rights for the whole year. This is about Halloween 2024, about what happens when casual racism meets something ancient, something that doesn't forgive, something that's been waiting for the right moment to teach a lesson nobody's gonna forget. October 1st, 2024. The neighborhood association meeting at the community center. 35 people showed up, all homeowners, 33 of them white. 2 black families had moved into Willow Creek over the past year, the Johnsons and the Washingtons. They weren't at this meeting. Nobody had told them about it. The meeting was run by Patricia Vanderbilt, 52 years old, president of the HOA for 6 years running. She stood at the front with her tablet and her perfectly styled blonde hair and her agenda that she'd printed out for everyone. Item 7, she announced. Halloween candy distribution. A few people looked confused. Halloween was still a month away. What was there to discuss? Patricia smiled, that tight smile she was known for. As we all know, Willow Creek has always been a special neighborhood. We maintain standards, we maintain property values, and we maintain traditions. Quality traditions. She clicked to the next slide on her presentation. It showed a breakdown of Halloween candy by brand and price point. Full-size Snickers bars, Reese's cups, Kit Kats, the good stuff. Expensive stuff. Then at the bottom, a separate category. Alternative options for budget-conscious distribution. That category included candy corn, Dum-Dums, those orange and black wrapped peanut butter taffy things that nobody actually likes, the cheap stuff. Now, Patricia continued. We all want to be generous on Halloween, but we also need to be smart. There are more children trick-or-treating in Willow Creek than ever before. Some of them coming from outside the neighborhood. Some of them from families who perhaps don't share our values or our investment in this community. Nobody said anything, but everyone understood. She was talking about the black kids, the ones from the apartment complex 3 blocks away, the ones who'd started coming to Willow Creek the past few years because the houses gave out better candy. Marcus Chen raised his hand. He was one of the younger homeowners, 38, tech executive. Patricia, are you suggesting we give different candy to different kids? I'm suggesting we be strategic, Patricia replied smoothly. The children from Willow Creek families, the ones whose parents pay into our association, those children get the premium candy. It's only fair. Others get the alternatives. Others, meaning black kids, Marcus said flatly. Patricia's smile tightened even more. I didn't say that, but if certain families from outside the neighborhood want their children to receive premium candy, perhaps they should consider moving to Willow Creek and contributing to our community the way the rest of us do. The vote passed. 28 in favor, 7 against, 2 abstained. It was decided. Premium candy for Willow Creek kids. Candy corn and cheap stuff for everyone else. Nobody said out loud how they'd decide who was who. They didn't have to. Word spread fast. By October 15th, most of the neighborhood had their candy stockpiled. Two separate bowls by every door, the good stuff and the garbage. Everyone knew the plan, even if nobody talked about it directly. The Johnson family heard about it on October 20th. Their daughter Imani was 7 years old, so excited about Halloween. She'd picked out her costume in August. She was going to be an astronaut. Her parents, David and Nicole Johnson, tried to explain gently that maybe they should trick-or-treat somewhere else this year, somewhere more welcoming. But Imani didn't understand. But we live here. This is our neighborhood. And David didn't have a good answer for that. The Washington family's son, Marcus Jr., was 10, old enough to understand what was really happening, old enough to feel the sting of it. When his dad, James, told him about the candy situation, MJ just nodded. It's fine. I don't even like Halloween that much anyway. But James saw his son's face, saw the hurt he was trying to hide, and something in James broke a little. They'd worked so hard to move to this neighborhood. Better schools, safe streets, a good investment. And still, they weren't wanted. October 28th, 3 days before Halloween. James Washington was working in his front yard, raking leaves. The house next door belonged to Richard and Susan Miller, mid-60s, retired. Their yard had elaborate Halloween decorations, zombie hands coming out of the ground, giant spider webs, motion-activated skeletons. Richard came over to the fence. "Afternoon, James." "Afternoon." "Listen, I wanted to give you a heads up about Halloween. There's been some talk about candy distribution. I don't agree with it for what it's worth, but I thought you should know." James stopped raking. "I already know. My son knows. Everyone knows." Richard looked uncomfortable. "It's not right, but Patricia, she runs things around here. People go along with her because it's easier than fighting. So you're gonna do it too? Give my son candy corn while the white kids get Snickers bars?" Richard trailed off. "I'm sorry." "Yeah, everyone's sorry, but you're still gonna do it." Richard walked back to his house without another word. That night, James couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about his son's face, about moving to this neighborhood because he thought it would be better. Thought if they just worked hard enough, earned enough money, lived in the right zip code, things would be different. But racism didn't care about your mortgage payment. Around 2 a.m., James got out of bed, went to the kitchen for water. That's when he saw her, an old black woman standing in his backyard, just standing there in the moonlight. She was small, thin, had to be at least 80 years old, wearing a long dress that looked handmade. She was staring at his house. James opened the back door. "Can I help you? Are you lost?" The woman turned to look at him. Her eyes were sharp, clear, not confused at all. "You're the Washington family." "Yes. Do we know you?" "No, but I know what they're planning to do to your children on Halloween. To all the black children." James felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October air. "Who are you?" "My name is Esther Rowe. I lived in Willow Creek a long time ago, before they decided people like us weren't welcome anymore, before they drove us all out with their zoning laws and their neighborhood associations and their polite hate." "That was you?" "I read about that. 1972. The neighborhood was mixed and then they decided it shouldn't be," Esther finished. "Made life so difficult for black families that we all left, one by one. They've been trying to keep it that way ever since. You and the Johnsons, you're the first to break through in 50 years. and they hate that. James invited Esther inside, made her tea. She sat at his kitchen table like she'd been there 100 times before. "Where do you live now?" James asked. "Everywhere. Nowhere. I move around, but I come back to Willow Creek every Halloween. To remember, to watch, to wait." "Wait for what?" Esther's eyes fixed on him. "For the right Halloween, the right conditions. When the veil is thin and people show their true selves. When the hatred is so casual they don't even hide it anymore. When they put it to a vote and laugh about it." James felt that chill again, stronger this time. "What are you going to do?" "Not me," Esther said. "Them. They're going to do it to themselves. I'm just going to help it along. Give them what they deserve, what they've been earning for 50 years. She reached into her bag and pulled out something wrapped in cloth, unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a small jar. It looked old, glass worn smooth. Inside the jar was something that looked like dried corn kernels, but not quite. They were darker, almost black. "You know what candy corn is made of?" Esther asked. "Sugar, corn syrup, nothing nutritious, nothing real, just empty sweetness. That's what they think of our children. Empty, sweet enough to tolerate, but not worth the real thing, not worth the good chocolate, the full-size bars, the effort." She opened the jar. The smell that came out was wrong, like rotting vegetation and old earth, and something else James couldn't identify. "This is cursed corn," Esther said. "Grown on land where bad things happened, where black people were buried in unmarked graves, where pain soaked into the soil. I've been collecting it, preparing it, waiting for the right time to use it." "Use it how?" James asked. But part of him already knew. On Halloween night, when they hand out their candy corn to black children while keeping the good candy for white children, this curse will activate. The candy corn they give away will plant seeds. Not in the children. The children will be fine, but in the adults, who choose hate over humanity. The seeds will grow, transform them, make them into what they truly are inside. James should have been scared, should have thought this old woman was crazy. But after everything he'd experienced in Willow Creek, after watching his son's face when he realized they weren't really wanted here, after years of microaggressions and polite racism and neighborhood association votes to exclude, part of him wanted to see it happen. "What will it do to them?" he asked quietly. "They'll become scarecrows," Esther said. "Human scarecrows, conscious, aware, but unable to move, unable to speak, only able to watch as their children see them for what they really are, and maybe, if they're lucky, learn to be better." She stood up. "I need to visit every house that's participating. Mix this into their candy corn supply. It won't affect any candy they give to their own children, only what they give to ours. The curse knows intent. It knows hate, and it responds accordingly." "When?" James asked. "Tomorrow night, Halloween Eve, while they sleep. By Halloween night, it'll be too late for them to change their minds." Esther left the way she came, through the back door, disappearing into the darkness. James stood in his kitchen for a long time, processing what had just happened. He should tell someone, warn them. But who would believe him? And more importantly, did he want to? The next morning, October 30th, James saw Richard Miller putting out more decorations, adding final touches. 2 giant bowls already visible on his porch through the window, one full of full-size candy bars, one full of candy corn. That night, James didn't sleep at all. He sat by his bedroom window, watching. Around 3 a.m., he saw her, Esther, moving from house to house like a shadow. She'd stop at each porch, each door, do something he couldn't quite see, then move on. She visited 32 houses, every house that had voted yes at that meeting, every house that had 2 bowls of candy ready to hand out. She saved Patricia Vanderbilt's house for last, spent extra time there. Then she looked up, made eye contact with James through his window, even though there was no way she should have been able to see him in the darkness. She nodded once, then vanished. Halloween Day, October 31st. The weather was perfect. Cool, but not cold. Clear skies. The neighborhood looked like something out of a magazine. Every house decorated, pumpkins and skeletons and fake cobwebs and inflatable ghosts. Children excited, parents taking photos. Everything normal. Everything fine. Except James knew what was coming. He tried to talk to Nicole about it that morning, started to tell her about Esther, about the curse, but he couldn't make himself say it out loud. It sounded insane. And what if he was wrong? What if Esther was just a confused old woman and nothing would happen? But he didn't really believe that. He felt it in his bones. Something was coming. Trick-or-treating in Willow Creek started at 6 p.m. sharp, neighborhood tradition. By 6:15, the streets were full of kids in costumes. Superheroes and princesses and dinosaurs and ghosts. Little ones holding parents' hands. Older ones running in packs with pillowcases for candy bags. Imani Johnson was in her astronaut costume. So proud, so happy. She went to the first house with her parents, the Hendersons. Nice enough people usually. Mrs. Henderson opened the door with a big smile. "Oh my goodness, an astronaut! How wonderful!" She reached for her candy bowl, the good bowl. David and Nicole watched, held their breath. Would she really do it? Mrs. Henderson's hand hovered over the chocolate, then moved to the other bowl, the candy corn, grabbed a handful, and dropped it in Imani's bag. "Happy Halloween, sweetie." Imani looked in her bag, looked up at her parents. "Is this the good candy?" "It's fine, baby," Nicole said, her voice tight. "Let's go to the next house." The same thing happened at the next house, and the next, and the next. Every house. Candy corn for Imani, full-size candy bars for the white kids right in front of her. Imani wasn't stupid. By the 5th house, she knew what was happening. "They don't like me," she said quietly. "It's not about you, sweetie," David tried to explain. "But how do you explain racism to a 7-year-old? How do you tell your daughter that people judge her by her skin before they know anything else about her?" It happened at 7:30 p.m., an hour and a half into trick-or-treating. Patricia Vanderbilt was on her front porch handing out candy. She'd gone through almost half her premium candy, given out at least 3 pounds of candy corn to black kids. She was in the middle of dropping candy corn into Marcus Jr.'s bag when she felt it. A sharp pain in her stomach, like something twisting. She gasped, dropped the candy. MJ looked at her with concern. "Are you okay, lady?" Patricia tried to respond, but her jaw locked. Her whole body went rigid. She could feel something spreading through her, starting in her stomach where the curse had taken root, moving through her bloodstream, into her muscles, her bones, her skin. Her husband, Greg, came to the door. Patricia, what's wrong? He reached for her, and his hand passed right through her arm. Not through like she was a ghost, through like she was made of straw. Because she was. Her skin was turning brown and rough like burlap. Her arms went stiff, straightening out to the sides, scarecrow arms. Patricia tried to scream, but no sound came out. She was aware, conscious, could think, could feel, but couldn't move, couldn't speak, could only watch as her husband and children stared at her in horror, as trick-or-treaters backed away from their porch, as her perfectly planned Halloween fell apart. It happened to Richard Miller next. He was in his yard adjusting his decorations when the transformation hit. His body went rigid, stretched out, his clothes hung loose on his suddenly stick-thin frame. His face became a rough approximation of human features, painted on, frozen. His wife Susan came outside and screamed, "Richard, Richard, what's happening?" But Richard couldn't answer, could only stand there, a human scarecrow, conscious but trapped. Within 15 minutes, 32 people in Willow Creek were transformed. Every adult who had voted yes, every person who had deliberately given black children inferior candy while giving white children premium treats. All of them were scarecrows now, scattered throughout the neighborhood, standing in yards, on porches, in doorways, unable to move, unable to speak, only able to watch. The children were terrified at first, parents rushing to grab their kids, calling 911. But what could the police do? This wasn't a crime. It was something else, something impossible. Esther appeared in the middle of the street, just materialized. Everyone could see her now. She walked slowly through the neighborhood, stopping at each transformed person. "You chose this," she said to each one. "You chose to treat children differently based on the color of their skin. You chose hate. You chose exclusion. Now you get to experience what you inflicted. The feeling of being frozen out, of being seen as less than human, of being a decoration instead of person." She stopped in front of Patricia Vanderbilt's scarecrow form. Patricia's eyes could still move, still see, and Esther looked directly into them. "You led this. You organized it. You made it official. So you get to stay like this the longest. You get to watch as your children learn what you really are, as your neighborhood sees the ugliness you dressed up as civility, as everyone understands what you chose to be." Esther turned to address the crowd, the unaffected parents, the confused children, the shocked neighbors who hadn't participated. "This curse will last until sunrise on November 2nd, Day of the Dead. 3 days, these people will stand here conscious, aware, experiencing what it's like to be treated as objects instead of humans. Their children can visit them, talk to them, maybe learn something. And if they learn the right lesson, if they choose to be better, maybe their parents will return fully human. But if not," she shrugged, "well, sometimes curses stick." The police arrived, EMTs. They couldn't do anything, couldn't move the scarecrow people, couldn't reverse what had happened. The news crews came next. By 9 p.m., Willow Creek was national news. By midnight, it was international. The cursed Halloween, the candy corn transformation, the racist neighborhood. James Washington stood on his porch watching it all. Imani was inside with Nicole, upset but safe. She'd asked him why those people turned into scarecrows. Because they forgot how to be human, James had told her. They forgot that being human meant treating everyone with dignity, with respect, no matter what they look like. "Will they turn back?" Imani asked. "I hope so," James said, "but only if they learn, only if they change." Over the next 3 days, the neighborhood transformed in a different way. The children of the scarecrow parents had to confront what their parents had done, had to understand that their parents had deliberately hurt other kids, had chosen hate. Some of the kids were defensive at first, made excuses. But as they saw their parents standing there, frozen, looking less human and more like monsters, understanding started to sink in. They talked to their scarecrow parents, tell them what they were learning, how ashamed they felt, how they wanted to be better. Patricia Vanderbilt's daughter, Emma, was 16. She spent hours sitting next to her mother's scarecrow form on the porch, talking, crying, promising to change, to be different, to fight against the kind of thinking her mother had normalized. "I didn't even question it," Emma said. "When you talked about maintaining standards and protecting property values, I didn't realize you meant keeping Black people out. I didn't realize that's what you were teaching me, to see people as categories instead of individuals. I'm so sorry, Mom, and I'm gonna do better. Whether you come back or not, I'm going to be better." Richard Miller's grandson, Tyler, was 8. He brought his scarecrow grandfather a Snickers bar, the good candy his grandfather had saved for white kids. "This is for you, Grandpa," Tyler said. "But I want you to know when you come back, if you come back, I'm going to share my candy with everyone. I don't care what color they are, because that's what you should have done." November 2nd, Day of the Dead. Dawn broke over Willow Creek at 6:43 a.m. James Washington was awake, watching from his window again. He saw Esther appear in the street, saw her walk to each scarecrow person, touch their chest where their heart would be. Some of them transformed back immediately, flesh returning, movement restored. They collapsed to the ground, gasping, crying, fully human again. Others took longer. Their transformation was slower, more painful. They came back, but changed, less certain, more humble. 3 didn't come back at all. Patricia Vanderbilt was one of them. Her daughter Emma sat next to the scarecrow that had been her mother and sobbed. Esther knelt next to her. "Some hate runs too deep," Esther said gently. "Some people can't change because they don't want to. Your mother had 3 days to feel remorse, to understand what she'd done, to choose differently. But in her heart, she still believed she was right, that maintaining her perfect neighborhood was worth the cost. So she stays." "Forever?" Emma whispered. "Until she truly changes. Could be days, could be years, could be never. That's up to her now." The story of Willow Creek spread everywhere, became a cautionary tale, a modern fable. The neighborhood that tried to exclude Black children on Halloween paid the price. People argued about whether it was real or an elaborate hoax, but everyone who was there knew the truth. James and Nicole Washington stayed in Willow Creek. So did the Johnsons, because they'd earned their place there, paid for it, and they weren't going to let racism drive them out. But the neighborhood changed. It had to. The neighborhood association disbanded. Patricia's scarecrow form was moved to the town square as a memorial, a reminder. Her daughter Emma made sure there was a plaque explaining exactly why her mother had been transformed, what she'd done, what she refused to learn. Some families moved away, couldn't handle the shame, couldn't handle their neighbors knowing what they'd participated in. Good riddance as far as James was concerned. New families moved in, more diverse families, Black families, Hispanic families, Asian families. Families who'd heard about what happened and saw it as a sign that maybe, finally, Willow Creek was ready to actually be a community instead of an exclusive club. Richard Miller came back human, but changed. He spent his remaining years working with fair housing organizations, fighting against the kind of exclusionary zoning and HOA policies he'd once supported. His grandson, Tyler, grew up to be a civil rights lawyer. The candy corn curse had taught him young what injustice looked like. The two other people who stayed scarecrows eventually transformed back, one after 6 months, one after nearly a year, both of them broken by the experience. Both of them having to rebuild their lives and relationships with children who'd watched them be literally inhuman. Esther Rowe disappeared after that Halloween. James never saw her again. But sometimes, late at night, he'd find a small jar on his porch. Inside would be a few kernels of that cursed corn. A reminder, a warning, a tool, if it was ever needed again. Imani Johnson grew up to become a teacher. She told her students the story of the candy corn curse every Halloween. Not to scare them, but to teach them, to show them that actions have consequences, that hate transforms people into something less than human, that choosing kindness and equality isn't just morally right, it's necessary for your own humanity. The candy corn curse became part of Halloween lore. Parents used it to teach their children about discrimination. Don't be like the people of Willow Creek, they'd say. Don't treat people differently because they look different from you, or you might wake up one morning and realize you've become a monster. Subscribe if you believe every child deserves the good candy, regardless of who they are.